Right now, millions of people are watching Mexico burn on their newsfeed. And while everyone is focused on what's happening today, there's a question about this country that nobody's asking. A question that's been sitting in plain sight for 500 years. What if the city the Spanish supposedly discovered was never a mystery to the old world at all? Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you comes directly from historical documents, old maps, and records that have never been hidden. They've just never been put together in a way that makes sense. Let's start with a name. Between July 1519 and September 1526, Hernán Cortez sent 5 detailed letters to Emperor Charles V of Spain, describing what he found in Mexico. His second letter, dated October 30, 1520, was eventually printed in Nuremberg, Germany in 1524, and it contained something remarkable: the first published map of the Aztec city of Tenochtitlan. That map has puzzled researchers ever since, because in 1520, one full year before the city was supposedly conquered and destroyed, that map shows a city that looks, by multiple accounts, unmistakably European. Organized streets, structured architecture, a layout that doesn't match what we'd expect from a civilization that had supposedly never had contact with the old world. Who built those buildings? And then there's the name Cortés used for the city. He called it Temixtitan, or Temix Titan, depending on the source. Titan. In Greek mythology, the Titans were the second generation of divine beings. They ruled during what the Greeks called the Golden Age. They preceded the Olympians. They were the original gods of a world that came before ours. Why would a Spanish soldier in 1520, writing to his emperor about a lake city in Mexico, use a name that contains one of the most loaded words in the entire Western mythological tradition? Was it a phonetic accident? Was it deliberate? Or was Cortés reaching, consciously or not, for a word that captured something about what he was actually looking at? Now, here's something that gets mentioned even less. The Spanish didn't only call the city Temixtitan, they also called it something else entirely: Great Venice. In a 1521 newspaper account describing what the Spanish found, the ruler of this lake city is referred to as the King of Great Venice. Cortés himself compared the city to Venice: the canals, the water-based layout, the bridges connecting districts across open water. But notice the word: not New Venice, not Little Venice, Great Venice. When conquerors name places, they typically say New. New Spain, New Granada, New England. They diminish, they replicate. Calling it Great Venice means something different. It means what they found was bigger than the thing they were comparing it to. What kind of city makes European soldiers look at it and say, "This makes Venice look small"? Now look at the portrait of Moctezuma II, the ruler of Tenochtitlan when Cortés arrived. Researchers looking at historical depictions of him have asked 2 questions that nobody has answered cleanly. First, how native does he look? Second, that symbol on his garments, a double-headed bird. Researchers familiar with European heraldry have looked at it and asked, almost as a reflex, HRE, as in Holy Roman Empire. That's not a statement, that's a question, but it's a question worth sitting with. Because the double-headed eagle, the symbol of Byzantium, of the Holy Roman Empire, of half the royal houses of Europe, didn't just appear on Moctezuma's garments. It appeared across the entire American continent, before European contact. Among the Olmec of Mesoamerica, one of the oldest known civilizations in the Americas, a double-headed eagle carved from smoked jade was discovered and is now one of the prized artifacts in a Costa Rican museum. Among the Quiché Maya of Guatemala, double-headed eagle imagery appears with pre-Hispanic significance. Among the Purépecha people of Mexico, the symbol became a marker of their identity, and they use it to this day. And then there's the account from Chile. The Spanish chronicler Jerónimo de Vivar, writing about the conquest of Chile in 1536, reported that the indigenous people had wooden eagles with 2 heads mounted above the doors of their houses. Another chronicler confirmed it. On all the doors and rooftops, imperial eagles with 2 heads. When the Spanish asked the indigenous people where this symbol came from, the answer was that they didn't know. Their parents and grandparents had found it there. It was ancient. Its origin had been lost to memory. The descendants of those people, today's Mapuche, still decorate their homes with this symbol. A symbol that is the emblem of the Byzantium Empire and the Holy Roman Empire, found on homes across an entire continent, with the people who display it having no memory of where it came from. How do you account for that? Now let's talk about what happened after the conquest, because the story of Moctezuma's family is one of the strangest details in this entire history. His descendants did not disappear into the general population. They were formally incorporated into the Spanish nobility. In 1865, more than 300 years after the conquest, the Moctezuma family was awarded a ducal title by the Spanish crown. The official reason was that the family deserved recognition for the fact that no descendant of the original ruling dynasty had been offered the throne of Mexico in the previous year. The family coat of arms, granted by Charles V in October 1539, barely 18 years after the defeat, features 30 crowns representing the 30 states of the Mexican Empire, and alongside them, griffins, an imperial crown, the eagle. Griffins are not a Mexican symbol. They are European heraldic symbols, appearing on the official Spanish royal grant to the family of the man Cortez supposedly defeated less than 2 decades after that defeat. And Cortez himself, his own coat of arms also included a griffin on the helmet. The conqueror and the conquered, both represented by the same European mythological creature. Why? What political logic leads a conquering king to formally ennoble the bloodline of the ruler he just removed from power, using the visual language of European imperial heraldry? These records are not hidden. The heraldic grants are documented. The ducal title is documented. They're just not talked about. There's one more piece that ties us together. In 1523, just 2 years after the fall of Tenochtitlan, the German cartographer Johannes Schoner, one of the most respected scientific minds in Europe, published a formal work called Opusculum Geographicum. In it, he compared Cortez's description of Tenochtitlan with Marco Polo's 13th century description of the Chinese city of Quinsay, the City of Heaven, a massive metropolis built entirely on water, with thousands of stone bridges, palaces, aqueducts, tribute systems, and birth records tied to astrology. His conclusion? They were the same city. He wrote that following a long circuit westward from Spain, there is a land called Mexico and Temistotan, which the ancients called Quinsay, the City of Heaven. This wasn't a poet guessing. This was a scientist making a formal publication for the educated elite of 16th century Europe. And then look at the maps produced in that era. The 1568 map shows California still attached to the North American landmass, the boundary between America and Asia unclear. Schoner's own globes show a physical connection between the continents. Multiple cartographers working independently kept drawing the same uncertain boundary, as if they were looking at sources that told a different story about where Asia ended and America began. So bring it all together. A city called Tenochtitlan, containing the name of the gods who ruled the Golden Age, also called Great Venice, also identified by a respected European cartographer as the same city Marco Polo described in China, with a map drawn by an Aztec with European education, printed in Germany, with Catholic infrastructure shown on that map before the conquest was complete, with a double-headed Byzantine symbol displayed on homes from Mexico to Chile, origin unknown, and with the family of its last ruler still listed in the Spanish nobility today, their coat of arms decorated with European imperial symbols. None of this proves a single specific conclusion. These are documented historical details from official letters, old maps, heraldic records, and the accounts of people who were there. What they add up to is a question that 500 years of official history hasn't fully answered. Mexico is in the headlines right now. Most people watching will move on by next week, but the questions underneath this country have been waiting a long time for someone to sit with them seriously. That someone might as well be you. Share this with someone who wouldn't let it go, and there's more on this channel worth your time.